I'm going to talk about what's happening in the Norwegian EV market. And before I start on that, a few words about the Norwegian EV Association as well. So we are a non-profit NGO. We are member-funded, and member-owned. So we do a lot of work to help our members. We answer emails, phone calls, and it's mostly about charging. How to charge at home, how to charge away from home, and so on. Okay, so to the numbers in Norway. Here we have the numbers of battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids in Norway at the moment. And as you see, there's been a very fast growth, actually. And we had EV incentives actually dating back to the 1990s. But we didn't start getting many cars before we got the introduction of the modern age EVs with the Mitsubishi i-MiEV, Nissan Leaf, and Tesla Model S in 2010, 2011. And today we have roughly 155,000 battery electric vehicles and 75,000 plug-in hybrids. And we think it's very important to distinguish between the battery electric vehicles and the plug-in hybrids. They are very different from a consumer perspective, and also the incentives in Norway are quite different. So I'm mainly going to focus on the battery electric vehicles when I go on. Okay, so we have 225,000 plug-in cars, sorry. That's a cool number. But I think the really interesting part about the Norwegian EV market is this one. And here we have the market shares for new passenger car sales. And as you see, we have had a very rapid development from 2011 until today. So far in 2018, 29% of all new cars being sold are battery electric vehicles. On top of that, we also have 19% plug-in hybrids. So close to 50% of all the cars we sell in Norway at the moment comes with a plug. And this is quite far ahead of most other markets. That being said, we do see that, as we've seen earlier today, very many other markets are moving ahead. So we sort of see the same development in other markets. They're just starting today where we were back in 2011. And that is, of course, very, very important because we need this to happen outside Norway as well. So a quick recap. This is 2010. You see, we didn't sell any battery electric vehicles, no plug-in hybrids, 75% diesel share. And we saw earlier today what's happening to diesel cars in other European countries. This is what's happening in Norway. Again, you see the battery electric, the plug-in hybrids, and the diesel is down at 18%. So from 75% to 18% in 7 years and counting. So change is happening really fast in the Norwegian market. And why is this happening? Well, we do have very strong incentives in Norway. And the most important incentives are the incentives when you actually buy the car. And what we do in Norway is that we have a quite high purchase tax on diesel and petrol cars. And this tax is based on weight and emissions. And it's very progressive. So the larger the car, the higher the emissions, the more expensive it gets per gram or kilo. We also have a 25% value-added tax on most goods. And what we have done for the zero-emission cars is to just remove the taxes completely. And this means that in Norway, if you go into a Volkswagen dealership, I want to buy a Golf, the e-Golf is more or less similarly priced as the petrol version of the car. Because on average, this purchase tax is around 9,000 euros. So we have high car taxes, we remove the taxes from the zero-emission cars, and they're able to compete in the marketplace. We also have incentives for owning the car, and we have incentives for actually using the car. I would especially like to mention the free toll roads, and we have a lot of toll roads in Norway, not only around the cities, but also on highways and things like that. That's how we pay for building our roads. I'll get back to these incentives in a few slides, but we have a broad package of incentives, and for some people it's the free toll roads, for some people it's the free parking, but the really foundation is the tax breaks when you buy the car. Okay, so we have a 30% market share. Are we there yet? No, we are not. And this is quite cool because the EV policy in Norway has a very broad political support from all the different parties in the Norwegian parliament. And the parliament, they have set a target that all new passenger cars and light vans sold in 2025 shall be zero-emission vehicles. That's a very ambitious target. We believe it's possible, but it's going to take some work to get there. But what I think is incredibly good is that we start to see similar goals in other markets. In Ireland, it's 2030. In the UK, it's 2040. They're doing it in India, China, they are even talking about this in Germany. So this is spreading. Maybe not 2025, but we are going zero emission. Of course, this is very ambitious. And if we are to reach this target, we are likely to go from 150,000 battery electric vehicles today to well past 1 million cars in 2025. And that brings us to charging, which is going to be a challenge. But I'll get back to charging in a minute. What are the other challenges we see moving forward? Of course, how long can we keep the policy measures? How long can we keep the tax breaks? How many vehicles are we going to get? How is the market acceptance going to look like? And of course, again, charging. So my next slide. It's in Norwegian, I'm sorry. But the current government, they are in office until 2021. And they have said that they want to keep the tax incentives for buying a battery electric vehicle when it comes to the purchase tax and the value-added tax out the current period, so out 2021, in order to be able to reach the 2025 target. So at the moment, this looks very good. It looks like we have very stable political will to actually achieve the target. But of course, there is a discussion. When it comes to the incentives for actually using the cars, we have started to phase them out, actually. But we are doing it in what I think is a very smart way to do it. We have implemented something we call the 50% rule, which means that at the most, you have to pay 50% when driving a zero-emission vehicle compared to the petrol and diesel cars. This is parking, municipal parking, it's state and county ferries, and it's also toll tariffs. So we haven't implemented all this yet, but we are going to do it. And I think this is an excellent way to keep an incentive, but at the same time, you have to start to pay. And then if you need more money from the toll roads, you can start raising the toll roads. You just have to increase it even more for the diesel and petrol cars. So, what about the car industry? This is Gareth Dunsmore. He's the EV director at Nissan Europe. And he's actually going to speak in 30 minutes or so, so if I'm stealing your point, I'm very sorry. But here Gareth is speaking at the Nordic EV Summit in Oslo a couple of months ago. And he said that 2017 was the year the rest of the world woke up when it come to EVs. And we see that the car industry is talking completely differently about EVs today than they did 3 or 4 years ago. We see the investments being made in the battery production. They are starting to plan to scale up to how to make electrical engines in large volumes, and so on and so on. So there is a very positive development. You work in the industry, you probably know this. But there is sort of a challenge, at least in the Norwegian market. How fast can the car industry actually deliver cars? And this picture is from the launch of the Jaguar I-Pace in Oslo a couple of months ago. There's a lot of interest, mostly men for some reason. But in Norway, more than 2,000 people have paid a 2,000 euro deposit to be in line to get the I-Pace. Almost 4,000 people have paid the same deposit to be in line for the Audi. And we don't usually pay 2,000 euros to be in line to be able to buy something. This is a bit special. The Nissan Leaf, they had 6,500 contracts before launch. I'm guessing this today is probably close to 10,000. I know they have delivered almost 4,000 cars in the Norwegian market so far in 2018. The Hyundai Kona, we don't have to pay a deposit to be on the waiting list for that, but 18,000 people are on the interest list. And yes, this is uncommitted, but Hyundai, they're telling us that they can deliver between 2,000 and 2,500 cars in 2018. So there is a huge unmet demand in the Norwegian market at the moment. Of course, you also have the Tesla Model 3. We don't know how many reservations we have in the Norwegian market, but I would not be surprised if it's at least 5 digits. So, we have incentives in place. We are apparently willing to be on a waiting list to buy these cars, and why is it so? Well, my next 2 slides, they look a bit boring, but they are incredibly interesting. We do a large EV owner survey each year, where we ask all the EV owners we can find who they are, what car they drive, how they charge, and so on. And we ask them, how satisfied are you with driving an electric vehicle? This is 12,500 respondents driving battery electric vehicles. And we ask them, okay, how satisfied are you? From 0, I don't like it at all, to 10, I love it. And as you see, the average is 9.1. Norwegian EV drivers really love driving their EVs. They are incredibly satisfied customers. And this is important. EVs are not going to happen unless the people actually like driving EVs. But I think the Norwegian case shows that we actually like driving EVs. And we also asked them, okay, if you had to replace your EV, what would it have been? Only 4%. 4% say they would like to go back to buying a petrol or diesel car. Then you have 10% saying plug-in hybrids and 80% wanting to keep buying the battery electric vehicles. And let me remind you, this is with the cars we have today. We know that the cars are only going to get better. We get more range, cheaper range, and faster fast charging. So this is, we're not going back. When you try electric cars, you really don't want to go back. And then, of course, we have the charging issue. And we get a lot of questions about charging. What we have done in Norway when it comes to fast charging is that we have had several governmental support schemes. It started out a bit sort of unorganized. The government said, okay, we have money. Does anyone want to build charging stations? Wherever you like, go ahead. From 2015, we got more of an organized way to do it. A state enterprise called Enova, they said, okay, we need a plan. We want fast chargers every 50 kilometers along the main road network in Norway, which is 7,500 kilometers of roads. They split the road network into 4 different packages. Then they split each package into smaller segments and asked the market who can build fast charging stations from here to here for the least amount of money. And they want at least 2 multi-standard fast chargers. So we have CCS Shademo, CCS Shademo, and Type 2 AC, 22 kilowatt as well. And this has worked surprisingly well. And this network is more or less finished, except for the very top of Norway. Nobody wanted to build this green part at the top. And that is because it's very cold, it's very dark, it's very long distances, and it's not many people living there. So that's a challenge we still need to figure out how to do. As none of the charging operators, even though they could get 100% support for the investment cost, nobody wanted to build it. So that's something we need to fix. We also need to fix this, charging queues. And this happens surprisingly fast. This is sort of used to be a large charging station. You have 4 50 kilowatt DC chargers. And as you can see, this is from last summer. It's all filled up, and people are waiting in line. This is very bad because staying as a consumer, as an EV driver, staying in line is incredibly boring. It's very good for the charging operators, because this is when they start making money. And I think one of the key lessons from the Norwegian EV market last year is that it is possible to make money on fast charging. And we see this because charging operators are starting to expand stations, and they're starting to build entirely new stations without any governmental funding at all, on a pure commercial basis. They're choosing to do this, they're choosing to invest because they see it is possible to make money on this. And we charge a lot more than the charging operators estimated a couple of years ago. So we get to break everything in Norway. We get to break the chargers, we get to break the back office systems, and so on. Okay, so at this location, Fortum Charge and Drive, they said, okay, let's build a few more chargers. And also one of their competitors, they built a second fast charging station 87 meters in that direction. So there's a lot more chargers at this location than it used to be. But really, we need larger and faster fast charging stations, and this is something we need to plan for. This is 45 minutes outside Oslo, and it used to be the largest fast charging station in Norway, and actually the world, as far as I know. Here you have 20 Tesla stalls, and then you have Fortum Charge and Drive chargers at the back. So 28 cars can charge at the same time. And you know, this is a large station. It can never be filled up, right? Oh, yes, it can. This is from January. It's a Friday afternoon. It's not a vacation day, anything like that, just an ordinary Friday this winter. And as you can see, the charging stations it is completely filled up, and there is several cars waiting in line. So this is not big enough, is my sort of message on this slide. And we know that Tesla, today, they are building stations with 34 plus stalls in Norway. So they are expanding and building new stations all the time. And we know that other operators are also planning for 50 plus charging stations. So you get more than 50 cars able to charge at the same time. And I think it's very important that we think big from the beginning when it comes to infrastructure. You don't necessarily have to put up all the chargers, but you really need to be able to put up more chargers. So one thing is that we need the larger stations. We also need faster, high-power fast charging. So this is Rami Syvari from Fortum Charge and Drive, and he's opening the first 150 kilowatt charger in Norway. This is just 3 weeks ago. And we really need high-power charging to happen to get higher throughputs at the charging stations. And of course, we also need cars that can actually charge at these charging speeds. So I guess, Nissan, please make cars that can fast charge faster, and all the other operators as well. We also need to fix charging in cities and apartments. And of course, this is a challenge not only in Norway, this is a much larger challenge in many other countries. England, for instance, London, how are we going to fix curbside charging? We don't have the answer to that yet. When it comes to apartment buildings, we see a very positive development where apartment buildings in Norway, they realize that, okay, we need to offer the possibility of charging cars, unless nobody's going to want to buy these apartments in 5 years. So we see more and more apartment buildings saying, okay, we make our parking garages charging ready. And this is, 2, 3, 4, 5, 600 parking spots. And they don't put in all the boxes, but they make the local infrastructure ready for it. So if I'm living in an apartment building, I have a parking spot, I can just, okay, I need a charging station, click it on the wall, ready to go. When it comes to street charging, I don't have a single solution to that. I think we need different approaches. I think we need a lot more normal charging, like this one in Oslo, but we also need more fast charging in and around the cities. We need to have flexibility on how we charge these cars. Yeah. So, let's try to wrap it up a bit. And the first part of my conclusion is that when the price is right, we get to the mass market. I think that this is what we have learned from the Norwegian market. If you level up the price on the cars, people are willing to buy them. Of course, we can't keep subsidizing these cars forever, so we need the car industry to deliver on their promise of making more affordable EVs with longer ranges. But in the Norwegian market, we have passed the early adopters. Today, when you go and buy a car, it's not just engineers and those who like technology who buys an EV. Just about anybody goes to buy a car and it's an EV. It's normal to buy an EV. We also know that the battery electric vehicle owners in Norway are incredibly happy with their cars, and they inspire others to buy. And I think this is also incredibly important just to keep repeating, really. Consumers love EVs when the price is right. The second part of my conclusion is that we are not finished, we're not there yet. We need to keep the tax incentives for a few more years in the Norwegian market before we start phasing them out. But I firmly believe that at 2020-ish something, we can start to remove the incentives because the cars are able to compete on price. I hope Nissan maybe will tell us more about this later. We also know that charging is incredibly important going forward. We need to scale our charging in the cities and on the fast charging locations. And this is something we're working a lot on in Norway today, how to actually accomplish this, how to do it. No one has done it before. We also know that the car industry has to start delivering cars. There's a long waiting list on the new models, but there's also a long waiting list on the existing models. Actually, if I want to buy an e-Golf in Norway, it's a 12-month waiting list at the moment. And this is just a warning to the European car industry. I'm sure you are aware of this, but in China they are making a lot more EVs than we are in Europe and the US combined. So if I'm not able to buy an European-made EV in a couple of years, I'll go buy a Chinese one. So please, make cars. So that sort of wraps up my presentation. Very nice car, right? Thank you.